So, do you consider the music that you make dubstep?
What's happening, people? It's your boy XI. This is Sub Freaks, and today we're going to be talking about Mala. My man's a foundational producer in the genre, cranking out hits that defined the early sound. Despite all the changes, trends, and subgenres that have come and gone, Mala has never wavered. Dubstep caught the attention of the underground in a major way in the early 2000s. Drum and bass and house had become all noisy and aggressive, and dubstep was the opposite, trading out in-your-face sonics for soundscapes and sub-bass. As we all know now, dubstep as a genre would fall into the same trends, but Mala has always stayed true to the original sound. So how has he remained at the top of the game this whole time? That's what I intend to answer in this video. Mala grew up in a suburb of London called South Norwood, near Croydon. Growing up in London, he was naturally exposed to the sounds of jungle and drum and bass through the 90s, and he says this was his gateway into bass-heavy music and reggae influences. Relatable. He started making tunes in '99 with two pals and a broken laptop with a crack of Fruity installed. They couldn't save anything, so they would link up, make a jungle tune, export it, close the laptop, lose the project forever, and do it all again the next day. But now that he was hooked on making beats, he would move on to the program Reason, which he says was more intuitive for him. And as an added bonus, he could actually save what he was working on. No question D&B was the big sound at the time, but two other sounds were starting to pop off in London: UK Garage and two-step. Basically, producers in London wanted to punch up the sound of garage house coming out of the US by infusing drum and bass influences, like big bass lines and MCs on the mic, and it was a sick mix. And speaking of MCs, it was around this time that grime would start to bubble up as well. Of the two styles, between UK Garage and two-step, two-step would definitely be the more stripped back and innovative of the two genres, setting the tone for dubstep to emerge. In this climate, if you were a producer looking for something new and exciting to latch onto, this was it. So Mala, under the name MC Malibu, would team up with Onyx Stone to put out his first track, What Do We Like?
Don't worry, I got a little surprise for them.
What Do We Like peaked at 69 on the UK music charts and got my man motivated to really get busy with music production. It's '02, and on Curtin Road in Shoreditch, a new club called Plastic People had opened, pushing the sounds of UK Garage and two-step. But very soon, this club would be the home to the most important night in early dubstep history. Forward. Remember that for later. Meanwhile, in Croydon, at a record shop called Big Apple Records, a scene was forming around two-step producers like Hijack, Benny Ill, Hatcha, and Artwork. Big Apple quickly became the spot for people vibing to the new sounds. Remember how I said South Norwood was near to Croydon? Yeah. Mala was hitting up Big Apple all the time. And soon he would team up with his longtime homie Koki to form Digital Mystics, the most important dubstep duo of all time. Apparently the name Digital Mystics is just what the two of them were calling the style they made before the term dubstep had been coined. And when Big Apple Records wanted to drop some of their beats, they just chose that name and stuck with it. Their first track, Pathways, came out to very little attention. You know, since they were making a genre that basically didn't exist to anybody outside of a single suburban record shop and occasionally played at a new club in Shoreditch. But the scene centered around Big Apple was expanding, and soon, Forward, a night created to push the sounds of dubstep, would start popping off, setting the standards for the new genre.
Dubplate, dark room, big sound system.
On Pathways, you can still hear the ghost of two-step. No, not that one. The spirit of two-step was still there. This and a handful of other joints coming out on Big Apple Records would catch the attention of Aphex Twin's Reflex Records. They put out a CD called Grime 2, featuring tracks by Digital Mystics, Lofa, and Code 9. And now that hype was building, Mala and Koki would team up with Lofa and MC Sergeant Pokes to form DMZ, a label with one sole mission, pushing the sound of dubstep. The first release on the label, Twist Up, would still stick to that dark two-step framework they had established, but their second release, on a collaborative tune with Lofa called Horror Show, is where the halftime rhythm we all know and love would bust out. Dubstep was kinda blowing up, but this was the early internet days, so it was pretty much only blowing up in London. Heading into '04 though, dubstep would start popping up more and more on BBC Radio 1 shows with hosts like John Peel and Marianne Hobbs. This would eventually culminate in an episode of the Breeze Block called Dubstep Wars, which brought all the heavy hitters of the dubstep scene in London together to showcase what the sound was all about. Dubstep Wars was a massive turning point for dubstep, for Mala, and for me. Being a jungle producer in Toronto, I was hyper-focused on the new shit coming out of the London scenes. I was already familiar with grime and two-step, but when I heard the Wrath Soldiers VIP on Dubstep Wars, my f***ing head spun. Was I really hearing rave music that was slow, lo-fi, and bass heavy? It was like hip-hop and jungle had joined forces to blow my f***ing mind. I would drive around listening to dubstep non-stop after Dubstep Wars dropped. Nothing else was even remotely interesting in comparison. But this was still just the beginning for Mala, and within a few months, anti-war dub would drop.
We don't wanna work tonight.
This track still goes off 20 years later. Every hardcore dubstep fan knows those three notes. Anti-war dub was a huge tune at DMZ in Brixton around the tragic events of the London bombings in 2005. Remembering this time, an article by Paul Benny put it like this: as Mala's Digital Mystics dubstep anthem Anti-War Dub booms out of the mighty sound system at DMZ in Brixton, its message has never seemed more appropriate. We don't want to fight tonight. Let's all unite. The words ripple through the crowd like a shockwave, triggering a release of all their fears. United by the vocal, they're getting a chance to express shock and reject all violence. It's a war on terror that's actually being won. This track would go on to be featured in the film Children of Men and solidify the sound worldwide. The other side of this record, Koki's Haunted, would also have a major influence on the genre for many years to come, but that's a story for a different video. I was fortunate enough to get this bad boy from Youngsta at BM Soho when I hit up London in 06, back when you actually could get this record. And that's pretty dope, because it's probably the most important dubstep record of all time. Here's a picture of me at BM Soho sporting a mustache for some reason. With the sound established, Mala and other artists from London would start touring extensively all around the world. Spreading the virus, as we used to say. Naturally, this made Mala a target for new producers looking to get their dubstep tracks played. With this avalanche of new music hitting man's inbox, Mala decided to use the experience he had gained from running DMZ to start his own second label, called Deep Medi. The label immediately championed some of the dopest sounds from legends of the scene like Chrome Star and Silky, even going so far as to sign on artists from Japan like Gothtrad. The aesthetics are quickly spottable, with each record featuring a line drawing of the artist by Tonnage. Mala would keep dropping his own stuff on DMZ though, with Deep Medi serving as a label for other producers' music. Now, with all eyes on Mala, his club night, his two labels, and dubstep in general, his production output would go nuts. The following year would see classic after classic hitting wax, like Ancient Memories. And Left Leg Out. Both of these tunes instantly went into heavy rotation, and you can still hear this back and forth between halftime and two-step. And while the global popularity of the genre would see the sound start to expand and mutate, Mala would double down on what was working for him on his next two releases. One of my personal favorites, Hunter. And the timeless dance floor classic, Lean Forward. The second drop on Lean Forward was an instant wheel up for many years after it dropped, which was good because this is where his output started to cool off. Probably due to him running two labels, a massive club night, and having a full touring schedule in a world that was ravenous for more dubstep. He would only drop a handful of tunes over the next year on I&I, Ringo Records, and Hyperdub. But in 2010, he would put out a full-length album with Koki entitled Return to Space. And this album would contain the track that Mala is probably most widely known for today. And that track is Eyes. Eyes was an immediate hit, but we gotta get something straight about what was going on in dubstep around this time. That's right. It's time to talk about Brostep. Dubstep was getting huge all over the world, and just like the genres it had originally sought to get away from, it was getting more noisy and aggressive. It seemed like every month the ante was getting upped on how much bass lines could assault the dance floor, and the people loved it. It was starting to look like this was the direction the sound was going, with more and more new producers getting in on the savagery, and a lot of early adopters were not happy. So what does this have to do with eyes? Digital Mystics dropped Return to Space right in the middle of the Brostep explosion, and it instantly became a rallying point for old heads who felt like the genre had strayed too far from its roots. It was also effective enough to make the new heads take notice. And look, if you think this is just me being hyperbolic for clicks, it's on you to explain the existence of Scralla.
Yes! Oh my God!
This wheezy edit put a spotlight on the contrast, making it obvious where the genre had come from and where it had arrived to. Now riding high as a household name in electronic music, Malo would take his musical journey to a new and unexpected place. Cuba. Based on a challenge from friend and musical luminary Giles Peterson, who had been doing Havana Cultura, Malo set out with him to Cuba to start an album inspired by the local culture. He told Inverted Audio, "I told him very straightforwardly I knew nothing about Cuba. I knew nothing about Cuban music. I don't know what he saw. I don't know why he decided to pick me, but I agreed." Malo linked up with Roberto Fonseca to get plugged into the sounds of the Cuban streets and introduced to music he described as in another world. From this, he would create the album In Cuba. It sounds like he had a pretty sweet time in Cuba, and this record is a dope expansion on the sound we've come to know and love from Malo. But this record didn't capture the same level of hype and attention that his previous dubstep singles had received. Maybe it was because his audience was looking for more dubstep heat to throw into their sets, and this was more of a listening kind of thing. Malo had turned a page though, and he would continue pushing himself further into new territory. In 2016, he would drop another LP called Mirrors, continuing this trend of boundary-breaking freeform production. Building on all the new influences from In Cuba and sliding in some jazz and ambient vibes, Malo would open up the BPMs on this one.
There are 4 elements.
Clearly, dude was moving heavy in this new direction, writing now to inspire and excite the listener with stronger musicality. This trend in his productions would continue on his most recent record, a collaboration with Joe Armand Jones called A Way Back. Malo provides the backbone here with his signature pounding rhythms, while Armand Jones applies high-minded music theory and jazz performance. You can definitely hear how much he's matured as a producer, with now over a decade at the front of the pack. I personally love that Malo has reached a level where he feels free to experiment with all the influences that he loves to drop more thoughtful and less functional music. But you can't deny that his work from any era is massively groundbreaking. Malo is a true pioneer. Anyone can be in the right place at the right time, but to put your money where your mouth is and push something from small concepts to global mainstream popularity is truly special. He continues to tour, produce, and put out records to this very day. And he could very well be blessing the decks near you real soon. So what do you think about Malo's impact on music? Or on dubstep? What's your favorite Malo track? Have you seen him live? What was it like? Please tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you're interested in what I'm up to, you can follow me on social media or check out some of my music at the links in the description below. And don't forget to like the video if you like the video. Subscribe for more dubstep lore and click the bell so you get notified when new videos drop. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.